Our speaker tonight is a friend of mine. He is a very accomplished man. He is a radio show host. He is a TV personality. He's a former candidate for president of the United States. He is a businessman, and that's really why he's here tonight, because of his expertise as a businessman and his involvement in healthcare that dates back over 2 decades. And he's been talking about healthcare. It's one of his core issues. He was the head of the National Restaurant Association. He's a former CEO of Godfather Pizza. His accomplishments, I could go on, but everybody has a book on their chair that he wrote that is that we've ordered for everybody, which is The CEO of Self, one of the many books he's authored. But this is a book that is really timeless, because it is a book about empowerment, and that's why we asked him to come and speak to us tonight, because what y'all are doing, what many have not yet done because they're not sure, and what some people are just on the fence doing and are hoping that it's the right thing, it is the right thing, and this is it's a scary journey, and you need to have the inner courage and strength to handle it. And there's nobody I can think of better than Herman Cain to help give you that encouragement. So, without any further ado, please welcome Herman Cain.
Thank you for inviting me. Thanks for the introduction, Dr. Hal. I have a lot of friends in this room, so this is not like I don't know a lot of people here, and it's good to see Grace Marie, who spoke to you earlier this afternoon. We have been fighting this healthcare fight since the early 1990s. She helped me and my organization, the National Restaurant Association, defeat Hillary Care, and we thought it had gone away. But Grace Marie and I talked and said, no, it's not going away. Democrats, if one thing, they are patient. You see what they are trying to do now? They waited until 2010 before they shoved Obamacare down the throats of the American people. They were back with a vengeance. And that's what led to the downfall of the profession you thought you went to school for. This afternoon after lunch, I went and got a cool beverage at the pool bar. I didn't go swimming. And there was a gentleman sitting at the bar, didn't know him, and I sat down and we just started talking. We had talked for probably about 20 minutes. And he was a little leery about getting into politics because at first he didn't know me. He didn't know whether I was conservative, liberal, or whatever. And so finally, about 20 minutes into the conversation, he said, oh, by the way, my name is Darryl. I said, my name is Herman. He froze. He said, no shit. I said, yes, shit. He froze. He said, what's your last name? Cain. The one I hear on the radio every day? Yep, I'm the one. He said, no, you're not. I said, so you calling me a liar? Do you know I had to show him my driver's license before he would believe me? It's bad when you think people know who you are. No, they don't. Then you got to prove who you are with your driver's license, okay? And then he says, so why are you here? I said, I'm here for a conference called Docs for Patients Foundation. They're sponsoring a conference on direct patient care. He said, really? I said, yeah. He said, what are you going to talk about? I said, I'm going to talk about health care. He said, why did you come down to speak to 250 doctors? I told him there was about 250 y'all. I said, Dr. Hal asked me. He said, who the hell is Dr. Hal? I said, trust me, you'll hear about it next week on my radio show. But I want to thank Dr. Hal. I want to thank Felicia. I want to thank Beth. I want to thank everybody that has made my accommodations and my visit here absolutely wonderful and delightful. Thank you, and thank all of you. Dr. Benjamin Mays was one of my heroes. He was one of the people that impacted my life. He was the president of Morehouse College, where I went to school. His last year of being president of Morehouse College was the year I graduated, 1967. So it had some special significance as well. And Dr. Mays was famous for some of his most powerful and impactful quotes. You'll probably find this one in the book that they've been so kind to give you. When Dr. Mays used to say, "Let it be borne in mind that the tragedy of life does not lie in not reaching your goals. The tragedy lies in having no goals to reach for." It's not a calamity. He said it's not a calamity to die with dreams unfulfilled, but it is a calamity to have no dreams. I would venture to say that every doctor in this room dreamed of becoming a doctor for reasons that you are experiencing now that you did not expect. My dream when I was growing up was real simple. I came from a very humble family. Father was a barber, a janitor, and a chauffeur. My mother was a domestic worker. I think we were technically poor, but we didn't know it because we didn't have the TV telling us every day that we were poor. And I had a dream. I wanted to make a lot of money because we didn't have any. I can remember going to elementary school, and they would serve hot lunch in the cafeteria. And the only day of the week that my brother and I had one younger brother, a year and a half younger. The only day of the week that my brother and I could eat lunch in the cafeteria was on Fridays. It was a treat for 25 cents. We got a hot dog, a carton of milk, and an apple. We felt like we were just like the other kids because we could eat lunch on Friday. My dream was to make a lot of money. I'm not ashamed of that. It makes liberals' heads explode. You just want to be rich. Hell yeah. What's wrong with rich? Stop apologizing for your success. So my first job, my goal was $20,000 a year. I started working for the Department of the Navy. I wasn't in the Navy. I worked for the Department of the Navy as a civil servant, making $7,735 a month. A year. That was a yearly salary. That was a GS-7. Oh, that's a big deal in the government. That was a GS-7. And so after about 4.5, 5 years, I kept moving up. And finally, my goal was $20,000 a year. So after about 4.5 years, I continued to work hard. I kept getting outstanding performances. They kept promoting me from GS-7 to GS-9, GS-11, GS-12. And then the day came when they wanted to promote me to GS-13 and run a group. And my boss called me in and said, we're going to promote you to the new supervisory mathematician. I said, thank you, Wayne. I said, why? He said, well, you performed outstandingly. You went back to Purdue and got your master's degree in computer science. And he had admitted that he didn't think I could do it. And I said, thank you. I said, tell me a little bit about this group. He says, you're going to have about 5 or 6 people reporting to you, and you're going to be in charge of a naval weapon that we call the rocket-assisted projectile. And we got a very demanding timeline that you got to get all of this done with those 5 or 6 people, but you're going to be the supervisor mathematician in charge, and you're going to be promoted to GS-13. I said, well, thank you for the confidence. I said, how much does it pay? $20,001 a year. If you don't know what your dream is, how will you know you got there? That's the biggest mistake that a lot of young people make, as I remind them when I speak around the country. By the way, watch the news on Tuesday night. I could be in it, not for a good reason. I'm speaking at Columbia University. I was invited by the Columbia University College Republicans, and we don't know what's going to happen. There could be protests. The college Republicans even came back to me and said, would you like to Skype in your presentation? I said, hell no. I'm looking for a fight. I hope they do protest me. So no. If you don't know what your dream is, how you know you're going to get there? But your dream was probably to be a doctor providing patient care and not having to deal with bureaucracy, government, and government bullshit. That wasn't in your dream. That wasn't in your dream, and I understand. But the thing about dreams, folks, is sometimes you have to modify them along the way. Because sometimes things will come up that maybe you didn't count on, like what you're facing now. Doug Farrago, I heard his presentation today. Every citizen of this country, every voter needs to hear that presentation. Everybody. Many of the patients out there, many of the voters out there, they don't know what you're going through. I know what you're going through. They're heard from their doctor, a sample of one, and think it's just their doctor, not realizing it's a whole industry, it's a whole profession that's under attack. And Doug put it in perspective. I'm sure you've had a lot of other great presentations, but he certainly put it in perspective for me. I had not seen it with the research that would backed up what you all are doing. Research of what's happening to your profession. I had not seen a presentation that great and that good, and it was outstanding, and it was informative. Let me tell you, two of my takeaways, and there were many, from Doug's presentation. Number one, 49% of all doctors will not recommend medicine to their children. That's the way it was when I was president of the National Restaurant Association. People who had been in restaurants all their lives their kids didn't want to do what mom and daddy did. They grew up seeing how hard it was. They grew up seeing how the government was trying to make it difficult for them to run a business with regulations, taxes. Kids didn't want to go through that, just like many of your kids don't want to do that. I remember a day when 80% of the kids of doctors in this country wanted to be like mom and dad and be a doctor. They see what you go through. They see the BS. They see that. And what makes it even worse is that a lot of young people are deciding not to become doctors because they see what it is. And if that trend continues, we're going to have a problem on our hand as a nation. And so very quickly, some people need to understand that health care and health insurance are two different things. All you hear about in the public narrative is they call it health care reform. No. It's health insurance reform. And a lot of patients don't understand the difference because the liberal media does not want them to understand the difference. Jonathan Gruber, who was one of the architects of Obamacare, although now Hillary claims that she doesn't know who he was one of the architects of Obamacare. And I have him on tape that we play on my radio show constantly. We have him on a speed dial where he said, lack of transparency is a huge political advantage, to a large extent because of the stupidity of the American people. He said that. But they don't play that on the nightly news. It was based upon the stupidity of the American people. And now the American people are drowning in the pains of Obamacare and all of the bureaucracy that it has spawned and all of the things that's making your life miserable, getting between you and providing health care. But many of them don't know about that. So as part of your consultation, make sure you explain that it only take about 15 seconds. And so the assigned topic for tonight, some people said, he's just now getting to his topic. See, I'm also a Baptist preacher, so you have to understand. So we could be here a while if y'all stay quiet. That's the Baptist preacher rule. Now that's what I'm talking about. I get some amens, I'll hurry up and get through with this. Overcoming health care and health insurance fear factors. Remember that series, Fear Factors? Your patients, the voters, are filled with fear factors about what's going on. They don't know what to believe. Fear factors relative to health care. Fear factors relative to health insurance. Fear factors relative to sick care. There's a difference between sick care and health care. Y'all know that. It breaks my heart when I have people call my radio show who say that they do not have health insurance and they don't know what they will do if they get hit with a serious illness. And I say, why? They said, when you got a $10,000 deductible, you don't have health insurance. But you're not going to hear that on the nightly news. So some people's fear factor is, what if I get sick? What if I get sick? Because you never know. Some people are freaking out over the fact that they no longer can choose their doctors, even though they were promised that they could, only to show up at the doctor and the doctor says, I'm sorry, under the new rules and under the new schedules and under the new this, that, and the other, I can no longer see you. And patients are leaving your office in tears because they were lied to again. Choice of hospitals, clinics. One of my best friends, his blood pressure shot up to 190 over something last week. He's my driver. Naturally, I'm concerned about his blood pressure. Okay? You don't want your driver having a stroke while he's behind the wheel. But he's my best friend. He goes to one of these urgent care clinics. And he goes in and he's a retiree from the railroad. So he's got Medicare because he's over 65. And he got supplemental insurance that's paid for by the railroad. The urgent care center clinic said, I'm sorry, we don't take either one of those. He said, what? He didn't bother to ask why, but I think you can figure out why. They were probably part of a bigger network that didn't recognize those sources. But he said, my blood pressure's gone through the roof. They said, you'll have to pay us $90 for us to check you out, your blood pressure. So he paid him $90. And they checked his blood pressure, checked his heart, did a couple of other things. And then they said, we really need to run some other tests on you so we can see if we can't figure out what is the source of your blood pressure shooting up like this. He said, but before we do any other tests, you're going to have to pay for those tests individually. My friend Joel said, y'all got $90 out of me. That's all you're going to get. So he goes to the emergency room. And this was late afternoon one day, and he was in the emergency room until 2 a.m., and they did, in fact, do all of the tests necessary. Because the urgent care center didn't fit into their network, or his insurance didn't fit into their network. People are scared to death of this kind of stuff. They're afraid, what are they going to do if their kids get sick or hit by a car? Those are the fear factors that people live with every day. Not to mention health insurance itself. Remember the famous line by Nancy Pelosi? We got to pass it before we tell you what's in it. Well, now we know what's in it, Nancy. You screwed the American people is what you did with that damn legislation. And I didn't know until after they passed it that the health insurance companies were in cahoots with the government. We didn't know about that. Something that they call risk card. They give it a fancy name, Dr. Hal, to keep us stupid of the facts. Many of y'all probably know what that is. Risk card is the term they use for a fund that they divvy up to the insurance companies if they don't make as much money as they thought they were going to make. I wish I had a gig like that. Risk carders. Now, many of you may have heard that yesterday, President Donald Trump declared that we will no longer fund risk carders for insurance companies. Let them stand on their own 2 feet and compete like everybody else. This is why they go gaga anytime the president and his administration want to do something to help the situation. The insurance companies are standing there saying, but wait a minute, you can't get rid of the risk carders. Pharmaceutical companies are standing there saying, but wait a minute, we got to get our subsidies or we're going to have to jack up the prices on the consumers. That's why the whole system is so messed up. So those are fear factors. Premiums for health care, deductibles. And here's the biggest fear factor: government regulations. Government regulations. Obamacare was passed in 2010. This is 2017. And until this president got elected president of the United States, nobody really knew what was all in that legislation. There are 2 experts who knew more about what was in that. Grace Marie Arnett's one of them. And Betsy McCoy is another one. Those are the 2 Sally Pipes who you know. Those are the 3 people on the planet who read that whole silly legislation and know all of the ins and outs of it. The American people don't have time to do that. They're trying to raise their kids, save for college, put food on the table, keep a job, the very basic stuff. And so every day since 2010 leading up to 2017, we learned something else about what's it doing to doctors, what's it doing to patients. So there's a whole list of fear factors. I got 3 solutions I'm going to propose. But first, let's make sure that you know some of the things that have happened most recently. First, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, and John McCain single-handedly stabbed America in the back. It didn't have to be a great solution, but it was a good start. Now, we know that Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski were never going to be satisfied with anything. If it's not perfect in their mind, they always vote against it. But then John McCain, out of almost nowhere, cast the deciding vote such that Vice President Pence could not pass the Senate version. It still was going to have to go back to the House and they fight it out. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. And Senator John McCain took it upon himself to stab America in the back. I have said it publicly. I've said it on TV. I've said it in interviews. I've said it in print. And it's undeniable. And then when he stabbed America in the back, liberals like Chuck Schumer said, "Thank you, John McCain. Thank you, John McCain." he became an official entrant on my rhino list that we will address later. But folks, we now have a president that is trying to lead from the top. We, your patients, are going to have to apply pressure from the bottom. When he signed that executive order yesterday, it reestablishes choice, reestablishes competition, raise the caps on HSAs, everything opposite what the previous administration wanted to do. Is it going to drive down premiums overnight? No. Is it going to drive down premiums over time? Yes. And then here's the big one that really caused liberals' heads to explode. Grace Marie probably talked about it earlier. No more subsidy payments to the insurance companies. You know what that's going to do? It's going to force them to compete. They're going to bitch and moan about all of the people that are going to be left out in the cold because the insurance companies can't give them low rates. Here's what they don't tell you. The insurance companies don't have to use those to lower rates if they don't want to. They can use those subsidies to pad their P&L if they want to. Like Jonathan Gruber said, it's based upon the stupidity of the American people. And President Trump, and here's what the people don't know. By not paying those subsidies to the insurance companies, President Trump is following the law. The law. Those are not legal payments. And a court determined that they were illegal payments. But did you hear about it in the mainstream media? No. I'm not mad at y'all. I just get passionate about this stuff. You understand? I cannot. My wife says, Herman, you got to stop sounding like an angry black man. I said, baby, I'm angry and I'm black. And this is one of the issues that gets me going because it impacts everybody in this nation, all 326 million of us. Health care, health insurance, tax cuts and simplification affects all 326 million of us. That's why I get so passionate about this when I'm talking about it, either live or on the radio. Here are 3 suggestions. Encourage your patients to navigate their health and their health care. We were spoiled for decades. We'd go to the doctor, and the doctor kept track of our treatment, and you developed that level of trust, and the doctor could tell you some things that you forgot. The system is too complicated now. 11 years ago, I learned what the word navigate your health care meant. I didn't know prior to 11 years ago. 11 years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. It was in my colon and my liver. I didn't even know what stage 4 was. I never heard of stage 1, 2, and 3. Stage 4 cancer. And I learned to navigate my own health care when I went to see my primary care physician, and he said, yep, you had a tumor in your colon that ruptured. Y'all know what a tumor looks like when it ruptures. I was on a business trip getting ready to give a speech at Whirlpool Corporation. It ruptured. I went ahead and did the speech, went back home, went to my doctor the next day, and he said, you need to go and get a colonoscopy, but I'm pretty sure that it's cancerous. Got a colonoscopy within a week, not a month, because the bureaucrat didn't have to decide when I could get the colonoscopy. Got it within a week, got the colonoscopy. It was painless. And then the guy comes out with the worst bedside manner on the planet. Mr. Cain, the colonoscopy reveals that it was a tumor that ruptured, and we're going to send it. We're going to take it and do a biopsy, but I'm pretty sure it's cancerous. Your next step is to go see a surgeon so they can determine how much of your colon will be resectioned. What the hell is that? He said, you can live without part of your colon. I said, oh, thank you for that valuable information. I didn't know what that was. I'd never gone through that. And he said, you probably, when you go see the surgeon, you may want to take the results of a CAT scan. So I went to a hospital, called my GP, general practitioner. He set up a CAT scan for me to go to one of the hospitals where they do CAT scans. I got the CAT scan done. But the technician isn't allowed to tell me the results of the CAT scan. I get that. And it didn't go back to my GP. I said, let me take my film with me. So I had my colonoscopy results. I had my CAT scan results. I got x-rays while I was there. And I show up at this surgeon's office. I said, how long you been a surgeon? She said, 6 years. Okay. We sat down and talked for about 40 minutes. And she explained to me about the resectioning. Said there was nothing in my lungs. And I quote, she said to me, I don't know what I'm going to do about the tumors in your liver until I open you up. My wife and I didn't even know I had tumors in my liver. Oh, you didn't know that? No, we didn't. Well, I won't know what I'm going to be able to do with those until I take a look. But I know we can do the resectioning. My wife and I got up and went to my car. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach 12 times. She didn't know, we didn't know. And I looked at my wife. I was getting ready to drive. She was on the other side of the car. She said, I took a deep breath and I said, baby, I got this. You know, being Mr. Masculinity. She said, no, we got this. Then a good friend of mine said, you need to get a second opinion. I said, why? Aren't all doctors created equal? She said, no, some of them didn't make A's in school. Don't y'all take that the wrong way. But she had a good point, Dr. Hal. I said, I don't think I need a second opinion. Well, okay, I'll do a second opinion. I can go over to Emory University, find me a doctor, get a reference and all of that. She said, no. Why don't you go to the doctor that I know in Savannah? That's where she was from. I said, why do you want me to drive 3 hours to Savannah, Georgia? She said, because this doctor who specializes in cancer treatment has been working with my family for years, and I would highly recommend that you go to him. I said, that's an awful inconvenience. You know how patients are. They don't want to be inconvenienced. I said, go down. She said, go to Savannah and see this doctor. I said, all right. She nagged me to death. I said, what's his name? She said, Dr. Lord. How do you spell that? L-O-R-D. I'll be there Monday morning. I told you I was a Baptist preacher. I'm a man of faith. A doctor named Lord. Went to see Dr. Lord, took all of my film, navigating my own care. Nope, didn't have the doctor's office send it. Nope, I took it myself, navigating my own health care. Dr. Lord and his associate took a look at everything. He says, go get you some lunch and come back and I'll give you the results. He came back, gave me the results, reconfirmed everything that had already been done and talked about. He said, I would recommend 2 places that you might want to consider. I said, what? He said, Kittering up in New York. I said, I hate New York. Now, those from New York, don't be offended. Let me rephrase that. I hate your government in New York, and I hate your taxes in New York, okay? And if you're from New York, you know what I'm talking about. He said, oh, you can go to the MD Anderson Center in Houston. Where's Ori? I said, I like Houston. Went to the MD Anderson Center in Houston, Texas. They assigned me, I had to go through orientation. It is an impressive facility. If you've never been there, you don't know about it. So I said, okay, I went there and I was able to get in and My wife and I went on Sunday because all of my tests had to be done all over again. You know how you all are. You don't want to believe anybody else's tests. You got to put me through all of that colonoscopy, CAT scan, x-rays, blood tests, all over again. So we had to go through orientation so we'd know where to go for this, where to go for that, where to go for all of the different tests because the facility was so big. But it is very automated. Every doctor could pull up your records no matter where they were because they put them into the system. So that was very impressive. They were kind of on the cutting edge of digital technology, using it to basically make sure that all of the specialists that you needed had all of the same information. So we go for orientation that night, and they went through a stack of stuff. We had to sign some forms and all of that. And we had been assigned a lady to do the orientation, that she was tied up with another patient and another couple. So the lady that was the receptionist said, she's going to be a while, so I'm going to take you all into the conference room and give you your orientation. We said, thank you. So you all don't have to, stay up late and you can go get some dinner because we know you got tests tomorrow. I said, I start fasting in about 2 hours, so can you do this fast? We go into the room and we start talking, and she starts going through all of the information. And I said, by the way, thank you for taking your time to do this for us. I'd kind of like to know what your name is. She said, oh, I'm sorry, Grace. Do you spell it Grace as in amazing grace? She said, yes. My wife and I looked at each other and we just said, thank you, Lord. Grace walked us through the orientation. Then they randomly assigned us a surgeon, randomly assigned us an oncologist. We went to see them after we got all of the tests. I went to see the surgeon who was going to do the surgery if he determined we were going to do that. They now had all the information in the system. And his name was Dr. Abdallah. So I asked his PA, see, I had to learn the lingo. I didn't know what that was. Physician's assistant. Where's he from? She said, oh, he's from Lebanon. Do they have any Christians in Lebanon? She said, oh, yeah, he's a Christian. Whew, good. I felt a little bit better. Met with Dr. Abdallah. He went through everything. He says, Mr. Cain, he said, the resection is not a problem. He said, but the liver, you only have 20% good liver. He said, the good news, if there's any good news, that all your tumors were off on one side. You got 20% dangling over here that's still good. He said, but that's not enough for me to operate and take out 80% of your liver. I said, what do you need? He said, 30. He said, so we're going to do something called a portal vein embolization. I'd never heard of that. Y'all know what that is. They did a portal vein embolization that same day, cut off the blood flow to the bad part, let the blood go to the other part and all of this. This is more stuff than I ever thought I would learn about medicine. Came back in a month and I had 30% good liver, 70% bad liver. He says, okay, we can operate. And I said, okay. Went to surgery. He said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take out 30% of your colon, 70% of your liver. I said, great. I think. I said, but doc, how am I going to live off of a sliver of liver? He said, it's the only organ in the body that regenerates. I didn't learn that in 10th grade biology. I must have missed that class. I said, now how, since the resectioning was on this side, this won't gross y'all out because you're doctors, okay? The resectioning was on this side. The liver removal was on this side. I said, so is that 2 operations? He said, no. I said, how are you going to do it? He says, 1 operation. He said, I'm going to start at your sternum. And he hit me in the chest. He said, I'm going to cut you in the shape of a J. As in J-E-S-U-S. He said, yes. Hal, I'm not making this up. And I'll be able to take out the colon and the liver. Long story short, the surgery was successful. Then I had to go through 2 intensive months of chemotherapy. That was 11 years ago, and I'm out here yelling at y'all tonight. Encourage your patients to navigate their own health care. You can't do it all. Number 2, encourage them to navigate their insurance coverage. With competition opening up, there are going to be a lot more options. And some new models for coverage and new models for care are evolving. DPC, which you all are very familiar with. HIP Nation, Dr. Hal can tell you all about that. Healthcare Impact Partners. I've taken a look at that and I know the people that are part of that. No government, no bureaucrats, no health insurance companies involved other than to provide supplemental loan, disaster coverage. Encourage them to navigate their insurance coverage. And then the third thing, and the final thing, encourage them to raise some cane. Get vocal. Call your representative and senators. And the message is simple. Support this president's agenda because his agenda is the people's agenda. He's trying to help you, help me, and help your profession, but he needs some pressure from the bottom, and that's what all of us can do, and that's what your patients can help do. I was sitting next to a guy on the plane flying down. He is a FEMA inspector. And he kept making statements about what's going on and said, well, my little voice doesn't count. My little voice doesn't count. My little voice doesn't count. I said, yes, it does. Most of your patients don't think that voice counts. They don't think it counts. Yes, it does. And if they want to know more about Raise Cain, tell them to go to the website of that guy, Herman Cain. Go to hermancain.com. We spell it out for you. It's an acronym. Call your representative. Ask them to support the president's agenda because it's the people's agenda. Ignore the liberal negative media and never stop calling. You're not going to get anything done, folks, with one phone call. I know this from when I was president of the National Restaurant Association, that when representatives and senators hear from their constituency 200 or 300 times on the same thing with the same message, they pay attention. That staff will say, something's going on. Something's going on. I'm going to tell the world about DPC. I'm going to tell the world about HIP Nation. I've been talking about docs for patients ever since Hal started the organization when I had a nighttime radio show. They just need to know that those are out there, folks. And so I'm going to spread the word. But Doug said it best today. You're not going to solve this thinking that is a simple solution. And the other takeaway that I got from Doug's presentation that I love is that if you look at the three legs of this stool, now the administration is a different issue. That could be a fourth leg. You got government, you got health insurance, and then you got patients. And with that complicated mathematical expression he had up there, if you get rid of government and insurance companies, you can solve the equation. That's what I do on the radio every day. I attack insurance companies and I attack the government. Y'all got to work with the patients. And together we can win this fight to take back our health care and our health insurance system. And the Democrats, they're not going to go down easy. I know this is supposed to be a nonpartisan presentation, Hal, but see, I mentioned Democrats and Republicans an equal number of times, so I think that keeps you out of hot water. They're not going to go down easy. Because the one thing I've noticed about the Democrats in Congress is that even if they're wrong, they stick together. Even if they're wrong. Even if the Republicans are right, they can't stick together. So here, this is why I say the people got to raise some cane. Because they think we are not paying attention. And they think that by November 2018, we will forget. A lot of people will forget. But not if you remind them. I'm going to remind them. The closer we get to Election Day, I'm going to remind them how they've been lied to. Explain to them the reasons why they don't have any health insurance that they can afford. So your profession is under attack, but you can win this fight only if you believe that you can. A poet once wrote, if you think you can't, you won't. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but think you can't, then chances are you won't. Life's victories don't always go to the fastest, the swiftest, the biggest, the smartest, man or woman. But sooner or later, the one who wins is the one who believes he or she can. Let's win this sucker, y'all.